Welcome to the Science for Sport podcast, where we dive into stories and insights that drive peak performance. Join us as we uncover the secrets behind the science of success. Here's your host, Richard Graves.
Hello and welcome to the Science for Sport podcast with me, Richard Graves. On this week's show, we're looking back on the career of a professional rugby league player, a Leeds Rhinos legend, who made his debut for the club at the age of just 18, went on to win 2 Challenge Cups and was part of 3 grand final winning sides, as well as the winner of the regular season Winners' Shield. He was the captain of the Rhinos at the age of 26, but by the age of 27, Stevie Ward was forced to retire from the game due to the ongoing effects of concussion. Today, we look back on his career with him and also reflect on how he's managed the transition to life away from professional sport. So, let's hear from him now.
Unlocking sports science to push the limits of human potential. This is the Science for Sport podcast.
Well, Stevie, welcome along to the show. It's great to have you along.
Thanks for having me, mate.
Well, for our regular watchers, viewers on YouTube, you'll already notice there's a change to the format. We've pulled out all the stops just for you, Stevie. We're in a nice new studio for the benefit of this. It probably helps that rather than being a guest that's on the other side of the world, we live in fairly close proximity. And I said there in the introduction that your career is, in any sport, the stuff of legend, really, what you achieved in such a short space of time. But then obviously the way it dramatically came to an end. As we sit here now, you're just 31 years old. How do you reflect on what has been little more than a decade?
Good question. Really good question. I think I reflect back on it a lot of the times, and it sometimes depends of where I am, what space I'm in to reflect back. You know, I always find that changes how you look back on things. However you're feeling in the moment seems to change it. But generally, I feel like it was a roller coaster, and so much happened in a such short, condensed period of time. And I think that roller coaster took me to winning finals, to playing alongside childhood heroes that I used to watch on TV and at the South Stand in the Leeds Rhinos stadium at Headingley, to feeling moments of injury and I guess despair and isolation and questioning, a lot of questioning of this is tough. How am I going to keep doing this? And yeah, like some moments is like that takes you to such depths. Is like, why do I do this? It's a tough game, you know. But in rugby league, mate, I think it's the ultimate physical contest. But I also think, and it's not spoken enough about, I think it's the ultimate mental and emotional test as well. So that's how I reflect back on it, mate. Really, in a small sort of window looking back.
Well, let's go all the way back then to 2012 when you initially made your first team debut for the Rhinos. It was a side that was already on the top of the domestic game in England. They were the standard bearers. They had the likes of Danny Maguire, Jamie Peacock, the great late Rob Burrow, of course, Kylie Luluwai, to name but a few. And here you are as an 18-year-old upstart, essentially breaking into this team, trying to forge your own career, and yet, as you say, playing with people around you who were legends in your eyes that you'd just a year or two earlier been stood on the South Stand cheering on.
What an experience, mate. And I just literally the other day went to a reunion of the 2015 team that I was a part of that won the treble and stuff, and 2012 is the year that I guess I came into it. And what I found really is, as a young lad, to come into the fold, it's a challenge because you've got all these greats around you. They've got their part, their roles, their parts that they play in the team, and you have to come into the team. And it seemed like it was a bit of a balancing act at times because you're giving space, you're giving room to these people that want to catch the ball, that want to take a carry, that want to score the tries, and also you have to bring your best to the team, and you have to be confident enough. You have to be at times selfish enough to stake your claim for a place in the team and to ask for the ball when there's people like Kevin Sinfield and Danny Maguire that have been so successful. And that's what I found in 2012. And that year was so unique in the way that it was the second year in a row that we'd finished 5th place in the playoffs, but then went on to win a grand final. So I'd watched in 2011 in the stands at Old Trafford as we win a grand final and completely defy expectations for all of the Super League from our form that year in 2011. I'd watched Zach Hardacre come into the playoffs and play in the grand final and be a part of that. And I remember, mate, sat in the stands that day at the grand final thinking, I want to do that next year. And then 2012 came around and it was like it was happening in real life. It was like I was living the dream when I probably still should have been dreaming it. And I remember that year where it was so up and down, and it was quite a visceral season in terms of emotion and doubt and joy and it had all the roller coaster of emotions. And then obviously it ended up culminating with a grand final win that I was a part of in 2012 after we'd just lost the Challenge Cup. So I had everything within that year, I'd say, you know, that would tell me what this game is, what this challenge is that I was taking up, you know.
And it was a fairly steep learning curve as well, wasn't it? Because if we take you back to, first of all, the Challenge Cup final, which came first, Brian McDermott's the head coach of the Rhinos at the time, and he selects you to start going out at Wembley. Obviously, the Rhinos playing the Wolves, having just knocked off the Wigan Warriors, the mighty Wigan Warriors, in the semi-final. For an 18-year-old kid who's just done his A-levels, by the way.
Yeah.
Talk us through that experience.
I mean, I'd had a few games before that and I'd played in the team, but then to be told that you're playing standoff because Danny Maguire's injured and you're going to be at Wembley and it's going to be in front of 70, 80,000 people. I remember being in the gym, being told that and given that message. And I think being in that environment, you get good at not showing your emotion. But I'm an 18-year-old kid and I'm being told that I'm playing Challenge Cup final, and realistically I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be playing in the Challenge Cup final. Few nerves, yeah, like excitement, like total, I guess, joy, you know, like that joy that you feel when you're watching a game and you want to be a part of the game.
Was there any fear? Because this is what we hear from elite level athletes. They do say it. There are occasions in their career, in their lives, when they do experience fear, and it's all about embracing it.
Oh, mate, well, there's totally fear. I can remember being in the change rooms, and this, I think these moments, these episodes, these periods in my life, whether it's on the field or off the field, they have encouraged me and given me a passion to study it further. And I've done a master's in speaking about fear and how that facilitates or is a barrier to authentic leadership. Because I see authenticity as the mainstay for well-being, for performance. And I'm going and speaking at all these companies and working with sports teams, and I'm driving people to get to this place, which takes a lot of courage, you know. And one of the stories that I can think of that for me speaks to that is a moment in the Challenge Cup final, where I'm an 18-year-old lad. I've come into the fold. I've got all these gladiators around me, this team which is the golden generation, and I'm playing in a pivotal position. I'm playing as pivot. And I can remember, you know, like those moments of being in the change rooms, and at this moment in time, my halfback partner's Kevin Sinfield, and I'd been like labelled the wonder kid growing up, and I'd often been labelled the next Kevin Sinfield, you know, growing up.
That's a big burden to bear, isn't it?
A big burden, and I guess I probably felt that at times, you know, growing up, and at the same time of feeling, oh, this is cool that people seeing potential in me in what is probably one of the greatest players that we've ever had, and the most successful captain in rugby league history. I guess you also, that line between self-worth, self-respect, and what you need to be to perform gets a bit blurry. And I remember, and I talk about psychological safety a lot now, which I never would have even thought about back then. But the questions that went through my head in that moment were, as a young kid coming into the fold, were, you know, like a lot of us do in sports, in workplaces, am I valued here for me? You know, can I tell the truth here? Can I give everything that I've got? And I remember doing the long walk to the change rooms at Wembley Stadium, and going to the toilet. About 20 minutes to go, and I remember every time the door in the change rooms opened, you'd hear the sound of Jerusalem coming through. You know, every time a coach or referee had come in, and I just took myself off to the toilet because I knew how to do that before these big games. That was my thing. Just go for a bit of space, you know, a bit of me time,
some alone time.
yeah, exactly. We all do that at work, don't we? Go to the toilet when we're stressed. So I go to the toilet, and I'm nervous. I'm totally nervous, mate. And of course, I'm an 18-year-old lad. You know, we sometimes forget. And I remember looking at the floor, sat on this toilet, and this moment for me is so clear cut in where performance comes from, because I had a note to self, if you like, that was passed underneath the toilet cubicle door, and it was from Brian McDermott. He's my ex-head coach. He was a coach for 8 years, the most successful coach in Super League history, and ex-Royal Marine, ex-boxer, rugby league player, and now he's a rugby league coach. And the message spoke to who I was as a person, but also who I was as a player, and cut through all the nerves. And it just said, Stevie, you always run towards the line first. You get involved in the action, and then everything happens from there. You're a tough man, and you'll go well today. Listen, it wasn't anything, there wasn't any revelatory tactic, but there was a clear message of connection from someone I valued, someone I cared about. There was connection, real connection, and there was a context, an understanding of the context that I was in, of nerves and fear and doubt, which makes psychological safety so buoyant in those moments. And you know what? I kept coming back to that place all the time throughout my career, throughout the injuries, throughout the doubt, throughout the losses in finals. Like, it's so easy to leave that place. And
that was the reset for you, no matter what happened for the rest of your career.
Yeah, and you know, I'd ask the questions in moments of adversity of like I said, like, why do I do this? You know, like, what do I bring as a player? And these tools for focus and motivation. I'd ask these questions, and it'd lead me back to the feeling of breaking the line and hearing my mum's voice when I'm a young lad and I'm playing on a rugby league field, and this is the thing, like, the fear was always there, Rich. You know, like, the fear.
Does it make you better?
Yes, the fear is. I go into so many different environments now, and sometimes there's not enough fear. You know, like we speak about, I don't want to feel fear, and obviously there's a fear of fear, right? But I go into sporting environments and to corporate companies, and there's not enough healthy fear. And so, being on that rugby field when I'm young, you know, I learned to go with it. I learned to accept it and allow it, and allowed myself to be vulnerable with it, to go into the fear and let it push me, let it guide me. Whereas I think when we get older, especially when we go into a fold that's like Leeds Rhinos or Manchester United or these clubs, we feel that fear and we see people around us and like, oh, they don't look scared, and we sort of push it down, and we don't want to feel scared. We want to feel like we know what we're doing.
It comes back to this original point, isn't it? Embracing yourself, your fear, your nerves.
Yeah.
If you're able to do that, you're able to actually turn it around it and use it to your advantage.
100%. And that's the magic, that something that we feel that we don't want to feel, and something that comes up that is not necessarily the thing that we think is going to help us. When we share that with a team, when we share that with teammates, colleagues, and they share it too, the risk is so much less. There's not much risk in between us. There's just the risk that goes on out there and the job that we have to do. And that's, for me, that speaks to being a human being or being a team player. It speaks to the that intuitive sense of performance, of well-being, of being whole as a person that we all see and that we feel when we, probably like yourself. You've probably said it so many times yourself, Rich, watching a game where a team's blown another team off the field, the potential's there, and you'll say they've took the shackles off for this one, And so my passion, and sort of as I was playing and realising it as I was playing, I'm a sensitive soul, me, Rich. I'm a really sensitive soul, but that also means I'm very intense. It means that I wanted to understand what the shackles were,
Well, on that point then, if you fast forward just a couple of months, you've just lost the Challenge Cup final to Warrington. It didn't go your way on that day, but you've already mentioned finished 5th in the league table at the end of the regular season. The Rhinos are in the playoffs. Prior to the previous year, no team had come from that far down to win the grand final. So Leeds have got that under their belts. For you, it's your first season, your first experience. You win a couple of playoff games, and it was a time when the team that finished top of their regular season ladder, they had the option of choosing their opponents for the playoff eliminator, the grand final eliminator. That was the Wigan Warriors. And they had a choice. They chose the Rhinos. Wigan are at home. Leeds have got to go there. What did that do for you, this team, that all-conquering team, psychologically going into Lions' Den, knowing that they've effectively said, we think you're the weakest opposition out there?
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I think similarly to that, taking the shackles off, I think there's something similar. I think that we say that we notice about teams when they're fully there and they're fully giving everything. We say, oh, they've got nothing to lose, And so I go, well, what is it that what is that nothing? If they've got nothing to lose, what are we talking about here? And for me, it's the fear of loss. I think it goes that deep. I think the fear of loss when we're going into a game, when we're going into anything in business, the fear of loss keeps us reserved and keeps us hesitating. So when Wigan pick Leeds Rhinos in 2012, thinking that they can beat us, then all of a sudden, Leeds Rhinos, the team that I was a part of back then, we go into the game and, well, they already think they can beat us. The chips are already down. There's nothing to lose here. And I think it does something to men, that. It does something to men, especially in sport. I think it allows this ability to come forward, the constraints come off, and I think the conversations that we'd have and the understanding that we'd have, and sat in the video review and the preview looking to Wigan, there's this sense and this feeling that we're going to fully be there because there's nothing else that's going to hold us back, and we can give everything, And I think that's the space that you can enter psychologically, which is courage. Is just totally is courage. It's meeting the uncertainty. It's meeting the vulnerability, and risk, and being able to operate in that space, which it's always fascinated me. It always did as a fan of sport, and then being in sport, and then now after sport, always fascinated me. But that win that we got at Wigan was. It was a shared thing, You could feel it in the crowd. You could feel the fans responding to that, and then obviously the momentum went on, and we ended up winning the big one.
All at the age of 18, you're a grand final winner. It's not a bad start to your first season, is it?
No, it's not a bad start. It's not a bad start. It's some could say it was a perfect start, But at the same time, coming off, I came off in the last 5 minutes of the grand final with an AC rupture, and I went. I go into exactly. I go into the change rooms at Old Trafford, and I don't really know the score. It's still neck and neck and stuff. And I remember the doctor running in and saying, "Oh, they scored." And I'm on laughing gas in the doctor's room. And I'm like, all right, yeah, probably couldn't get better than winning a grand final and being on laughing gas in the doctor's room, So that was jubilation, that moment, mate. I've got to say, yeah, unbelievable.
Well, like I say, a really steep learning curve for a young lad in his rookie season, a grand final winner, dealing with a serious injury that's going to sideline you for a while. But you came back from it, as was the trademark of your character and career, really, in rugby league. You'd go on to win a Challenge Cup in 2014, and then came the 2015 season, the historic treble season. I guess it all started with the rout of Hull Kingston Rovers in the Challenge Cup final, 50-odd points to nil, I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah.
But was the defining moment the way you won the League Leaders Shield in the regular season? Because there was several ways that could have gone on the final night. The Rhinos are playing away from home at the Huddersfield Giants. Wigan are very much in the mix. I think Saints were around there as well. And again, a bittersweet moment for you because you're starting, but you'd get another injury and wouldn't actually be on the field at the moment of winning the game, would you?
Oh, mate, I know. At that reunion the other night, it sort of brought it all back, and it felt a very strange experience to relive it. Players were there, and there was some Hall of Famers, Danny Maguire and Kylie Luai, getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. And we're looking back on videos from 2015, and part of the highlight reel was me scoring in the opening minutes, and then saying that I get badly injured, and then the chaos that ensued straight after that. It was a huge day for me, and I don't know how many people know it. I'd mentioned it in the documentary in 2015, but it was my nana's funeral that morning. So I'd gone over to my nana's funeral in Salford to come back after the wake to play the game in Huddersfield straight after that. So it was like this huge emotional day for me, and I remember feeling somewhat vacant of energy a little bit, you know. I remember it was coming to the end of the season, and we'd just played the Challenge Cup, and I remember looking around the change rooms, and we were all like mentally, physically hungover from winning the Challenge Cup, you know, winning 15-0 at Hull KR, and and I remember like, because I wanted it so much, Rich, you know, like I wanted to win so much, and I wanted to be that player. I guess lead the team in a way at that age as well, and I remember looking around the change rooms and knowing we needed something, and I remember like saying like, we're gonna have to put our bodies on the line for this one, and looking around at like JP and Kev and Magsy and saying this as a 21-year-old, and not many of them knew that I'd just been to my nana's funeral that morning. And I scored the try, and I don't know, it's one of those tries I didn't know where it came from. I just let go, and it just happened, and I ended up drifting through the line and putting the ball down and celebrating, you know, like properly celebrating like I'd not done before. And then the game's to and fro in, and we were poor as a team, and and eventually it gets to the last 10 minutes, and I'm just running, and I'm going towards a tackle, and my knee just collapses. You know, it just gives way, and then.
Did you know immediately?
And the searing pain, I just knew. I was like, wow, it felt like I'd been shot in my leg, like it was that strong. It's definitely the most painful injury I've had. And then I came off the field, and then I'm in the change rooms, and again, I'm not really knowing what's going on, but I'm thinking we're going to lose here.
Yeah, because for people that don't know or can't remember, that the Rhinos actually scored the try that won the regular season ladder shield with pretty much the last play of the game.
Last second, yeah, literally the last second. So I'm in the change rooms, and I'm looking at my knee. It looks like an inflatable knee at this point, And I'm like, wow, I'm thinking... There's a few things I was thinking. I'm thinking like, that's me obviously done for the rest of the year. This is going to be probably 12 months. And I'm thinking there's going to be a lot less of a bonus at this point, I'm thinking we're finishing fourth.
As well, isn't it? Because in rugby league, finance does matter.
Well, yeah, you're finishing fourth, and compared to finishing first, there's a big difference. But yeah, I have to say that was a bit residuary compared to the game that was going on out there. And then, you know, thinking about what I've done to my knee. And then again, the doctor runs in, and guess who scored again? Ryan Hall. I'm thinking, how does this guy keep pulling it out of the bag? But then it's almost like all these emotions going, and I remember thinking, I have to be happy and smiling and stuff, but I don't know if I feel like that. I've just shot my knee to bits, you know, and yeah, and I remember, and I do wonder, you know, one of my best friends, Adam Cuthbertson, that played a huge role in my career from 2015, especially in 2017. I'd always thought he was just a strange Australian before this point, but he came into change rooms, just Cuthbert on his own, and brought me out, you know, to celebrate and be a
part of this
it.
team, and you're going to be there with us.
Exactly, yeah. And I was like, wow, that's huge, that. And that's those moments which me and him will have a connection stronger than most, I think, from moments like that. And then that brotherhood or that camaraderie went on through a tough time in 2016 to eventually a moment in 2017, which I think we'll probably sort of be proud of for the rest of our lives, I think.
Talk to us a little bit about 2017, because you were very nearly sidelined with an injury again, weren't you? And made one of the more astonishing recoveries I think will ever be seen in sport.
Actually, yeah, I think it. I was speaking to a good friend about a year or two ago. We was speaking about my career, and it's like, it's almost like a mirror image of being injured and like 2015 was, but then on the other side of it, you actually managed to come back for the final and play, and you know, so 2017 was we were great as a team, really great. Apart from when we played one team, which was Castleford Tigers, who would absolutely hammer us every time we played, who were, you know, I think a lot of this founds what I speak about in my keynotes and my work now. You know, it's why I call it the authenticity game plan, because Cass had amazing game plans. They had amazing tactics. They had amazing players, and for some reason we didn't quite show up against them. We didn't quite show up. We weren't in the fight most of the time, and we sort of had a game plan that was different to Cass's. Cass would say, for instance, in Lay's terms, they'd get to a certain part on the field, it might be in line with the post or the middle of the field, and then they put an expansive, beautiful play out wide and use their amazing backs to score, and they'd jump over the try line with like an inch to go, and they put the ball down, and everyone get up and be like, wow, that was good, you know. And then our game plan, I guess it was based more on trust of our unique individuals that we had. We had Rob Burr, we had Adam Cuthbertson, Danny Maguire.
Players that played alongside each other for a decade or more,
yeah,
and instinctively knew where the other would be.
Yeah, for a long time these players had played with each other, and I think for a long time, were used to honouring what we could do, pretty much like improvisation in a way, you know, like, and a lot of games fans would be like, Leeds don't know what they're doing in attack, they need more structure, and I think always quietly Brian McDermott, he knew, and he used to say this to us in games, especially in the finals, the semi-finals, that you're going to have to surprise yourselves just as much as you surprise the other team to win this one. And I think really what he's doing there is he's obviously being vulnerable. You know, I think the temptation for coaches is desperately to know the answer and know what to give the teams. But he's also given us the opportunity to step up and be authentically us, uniquely us. And that year culminated in where we'd both played semi-finals. Castleford played St Helens, they knocked a drop goal over to book their ticket to the grand final, and we'd played Hull FC in the semi-final, and again scored a try in the opening 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm on for this. I'm not holding anything back. Scored a try in the first 5 minutes, and then we're winning quite comfortably, I think, until the last 5 minutes, where I run in and get tackled by one guy. There's another that jumps on top, and the third jumps on top of me. It's like the straw that brought the camel's back. You know, it was like that's when my shoulder dislocated posteriorly.
Was there ever a point during your career when you thought there's a trend building here? Last 5 minutes of games is not the time I need to be on the rugby field.
Yeah. Do you know what? Yeah, definitely. I think there was. I think there were moments where we were winning and stuff, and I knew that the game was done, and I'd think, oh, I might come off here. You know, just
self-preservation as much as anything else.
Yeah. So, anyway, you know, zoom on to fast forward to me going to the hospital and not being able to put my shoulder back in, so they have to take me to theatre the next morning. I've been in absolute agony all night. The team have booked their way through to the grand final. I'm not looking at my phone because I don't really want to text anyone. I feel sorry for myself just as much as they maybe feel sorry for me. And I go to mum's and dad's house. I remember they look after me, and I remember my aunties coming over, like bringing around like pork pies and sausage rolls. It was like a cheap version of a wake, you know. It was like as if someone had died. And I'd go from everyone
treading very carefully around you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm totally in this place where, if I'm honest, Rich, I felt like a lot of shame, really, because I'm like, why do I keep getting injured? You know, like, why do I? And I remember getting some texts from my teammates, and Adam Cuthbertson texted me, Brad Singleton texted me, Mitch Garber. There was quite a few text me, but the main one that I remember being really sort of poignant was Adam Cuthbertson's text, and he texted me a quote, and he said that he found this quote online. I've never been able to find it after, so I don't know where it's come from. I don't know if it's come from his magical mind, but the quote was lying dead, naked on the ground, stripped of his valuable armour, now's the time. And you talk about vulnerability, you talk about the shackles, you talk about the armour. Like, I was totally stripped of it. I was totally stripped of pride, of concern about controlling what I wanted to happen, and of also the pressure of what it is to go into a grand final week. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm going to see if I can do it.
Madness. Your shoulder hanging out for the best part of 12 hours, having to go into surgery, and in the space of 2 weeks, you're now suddenly thinking, I can play in this game.
Yeah. And I think it, and I'm also in a place of acceptance, you know. I've got the connection with the team. I've got a connection with the medical staff. I say I'm gonna give this a go. We'll go see the surgeon on the Monday, and we'll try some things out, and we'll just see. We're gonna have a crack at this. The surgeon said it's gonna need an operation, but I'd understand if you wanted to try and play with it. I'm like, oh, all right. You know what I mean? Okay. Well, you know, he's seen my shoulder, he's seen inside it, all the rest of it. So I'm gonna do it, and everything just. It was a bit like an after. You know, people talk about when they've had like the near-death experiences, right? This is nowhere near it. I'm not saying it's anywhere near it, but I'm saying how free I felt in that week. I felt like a kid that could just go and enjoy that week and go into this final and give everything.
And you did. This is a thing, having lost, was it on 3 separate occasions during the regular season to the Tigers?
Yeah.
You're the underdogs going into the grand final, and yet you find a way to win and lift your third grand final trophy. Like I said right at the outset, it's a remarkable story. And of course, things moved on from 2017. 2.5 years later, you're named Leeds Rhinos captain. You're only 26 years old, a great honour. But how many times did you actually captain the team out on the field?
I think I'd done it a few times in 24 after Cal. Not 24. When I was 24. When Cal Watkins got injured, and then Trent Merrin came in 20. I'll get my years mixed up now. The year after that, 2019. And then, 2020 was friendlies, and then the first game of the season is when I got the concussion.
And everybody thinks
last game.
concussion, you'll be out for a couple of weeks, you'll come back. It wasn't so straightforward though, was it?
No, I mean, so that second concussion that I got on the first game of the season, I mean, it's obviously still affects me now, you know, Rich, with the headaches and the dizziness. So it's not been an easy ride. It's not been an easy ride. And especially when I was captain and felt like I was embarking on that way to lead a team that I felt so passionate about was difficult, you know.
How difficult was it at the age of 27 to come to that definitive decision that you're going to step away from a career in sport? It's not really a decision, I guess, that you'll ever feel you were able to make yourself. It was made for you.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's a really weird one. It feels like I think over the last few years, it's like you have certain levels of realization of it not happening anymore, if that makes sense. You know, like I guess there's, you know, an element of grief and denial, maybe. You know, you sort of you make the decision, but when I was not getting better after 7-8 months, the writing was on the wall really for me that I shouldn't carry on playing. I guess the last few years, mate, has been really quite a test. It felt like a big test for me, and at times it's been one that I've not wanted to meet, you know. But you realise a lot about yourself, and you know, I realise a lot of love that I have for my partner, Natalie, who's been really supportive. I mean, really supportive, don't cut it, I don't think, but and that's the part of the transition as well. You have to realise again, you know, who you were when you first picked a rugby ball up, which was 6-7 years old for me, maybe a bit earlier actually, and bringing in all the parts of myself that fueled me as a human being that maybe I'd not paid much attention to when you're playing. You know, that's been a big part of it, of the transition. I think in sport, you know, I do a lot of work with athletes around this actually, like, and there was a really, really amazing thing that a young athlete said to me, talking about athlete transition and transitioning out of sport. And she's like, do you think we transition into sport? You know, which I thought was really quite interesting because
it's not a question you hear often asked.
No, it's not. It's not. And I think largely, I think we do. I think to go into an environment, a team where there's a lot on the line, I think it's often that we stop expressing all of who we are, you know, which I feel and have seen it and is the thing that underlies the totality of performance that we can achieve, you know. So yeah, so it's been a really interesting, tough, difficult last few years, I'd say.
And still a journey and a battle that's ongoing.
Yeah, it definitely is with the symptoms. You know, I have faith that eventually they'll get better. And it gives me a lot of purpose actually and passion to really support athletes, I guess. Support athletes and
But
leaders.
I was going to, before we close this discussion, that's something I wanted to bring up, because we've spoken at length about your career as being part of a professional elite sports team that's known pretty much nothing but success on the field. Having gone through the experience you have, how much solace has been found in the career that you're now forging for yourself? Because I know that you do speak to athletes, but not just athletes. You go into companies, businesses, big corporations, and talk to them about leadership and teamwork and your own experiences and how you deal with adversity and, as we mentioned, fear. So how much have you been able to comfort, if you like, have you been able to find in speaking to people, as frankly as you've done on today's podcast, and helping shape some of the ways they work, their habits?
Yeah, I find it to be really exciting and exhilarating at times, especially when you're going into a football team or Premier League team or whatever. And I feel that there's this gulf in emotional intelligence, really, that I'm stood there and I'm seeing, and I guess I'm feeling that I'm like, wow, like there's so much to go here. There's so much to go at, where the psychological safety, the awareness, the vulnerability, the authenticity, all of those things that could come into this fold, into this environment that's bled into the routines that they're doing every day, that is team spirit, that ever elusive team spirit. I believe that's where it comes from, these elements, these facets of emotional intelligence. And it excites me, and I love seeing transformation, Rich. I love seeing transformation. I love these people that have to do tough jobs and that have to work as a team, where they realise that they've got so much more potential than they thought, like, and then that's in connection, and it bubbles up, and it becomes something that I think is. It becomes a feeling that I had, which I had in 2019 after we'd struggled as a team for a lot of the year, and I realised it then. I realised that there was a real lack of care for each other, and I'd done some meetings as a captain at that point, standing captain, and they turned it around. They totally turned it around, and I remember, and I'm not a dad, but I remember being sat in the stands watching it and feeling proud, because they just accessed so much more potential that they didn't even know was there. That's for me.
It comes back to this whole
me.
notion of taking the shackles off again.
Yeah.
I imagine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, listen, don't miss this opportunity for viewers on our YouTube channel or listeners on the podcast. If they run their own business, have employees, teams they work with, and are inspired by what you've had to say on this week's show, how can they get hold of you? How can they book Stevie Ward?
Well, I'm always bumbling around on LinkedIn, mate, so you can go on LinkedIn and search Stevie Ward for that. Otherwise, you can go on stevieward.co.uk and have a look at everything that's going on there. Send me a message and we can have a good chat. We'll have a good chat, if anything else.
And for fans, as much as anything else, on X, on Instagram, you're on those platforms.
Yes, I'm on Instagram on a username and X, but I've not gone on there recently. I've not felt the vibe for it, to be honest. But I'm on both of them under a username that I made back when I was 16. That's Steve_Ward. So you can find me on there.
The more things change, the more they stay the same, eh?
Exactly. You got to keep that, haven't you? You got to keep that.
Absolutely.
Username.
Listen, Stevie, as always, an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show, and we'll do it again soon, no doubt.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate you as always.
Unlocking sports science to push the limits of human potential. This is the Science for Sport podcast.
Huge thanks to Stevie Ward for coming on this week's podcast and sharing his experiences both on the sporting field and off it. And if you are inspired or want to know more about some of the issues that we discussed this week, then you can do so by visiting our website, www.scienceforsport.com. And if you've enjoyed this particular episode, please do feel free to share it with a coach, a colleague, an athlete, or a friend. Remember, the more downloads we get, the easier it becomes for us to then attract top-name athletes or professionals at the very cutting, leading edge of their field. Well, that is just about all for this week's edition. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to the next time and the next edition. You can join us on the Science for Sport podcast.
Subscribe to the Science for Sport podcast now, wherever you listen to your podcasts. For more insights, resources, and to join the Academy, visit scienceforsport.com and connect with us on social media by searching for @ScienceForSport. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.